Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 332. I am your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. Good night, Roger. Things are well, bro. Yeah, it is the 18th of January, moving along in this new year 2024, and it's a Thursday. So you know what we do on a Thursday? It's Thursday Talks. We're just here chilling, talking about whatever discussion the live has. Once you're inside of the live, make sure you hit that like button, double tap the screen over there on TikTok. That's how you hit that like button, and you can do it as many times as you like. So please, like to do it many times. And if you're viewing this on YouTube, hit that like button to drop a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about the live, about the topics, and it helps the algorithm too. So it works either way. Let's jump right in though. What's going on, people? What's the questions and comments for the evening? Trini Hotep already on the inside. What's the good, bro?
Good, bro. What's good, man? What's good out here, man? Some different tonight, do some. Well, could we even call it different? I don't know. We cover everything over here now, man. You know what I'm saying? But what is interesting is that I do take in a lot. Talking about, the general environment now, boy. And one thing it seems to be popping up a lot is the realm of finance and economics. Should I have the same problem to it? I see it a lot. I don't think people quite understand this economy, how economy operates, how finance, how money, how our income operates now. And it's kind of weird to me, like, if you want about money number, yeah, you gotta do 100
You're breaking up a little bit there, Hotep. You're breaking up a little bit there, bro.
Am I?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit on the go there.
You know?
Is there anything as a foolproof, successful economy? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the economy has the difficulty of having to work with human beings. Thank you, Jojo. That's much appreciated. Kevon, do you know much about astronomy? I guess it's according to what you know about what you mean by much. I mean, I know some. I know the is it 9 planets? Well, 8 now. Poor Pluto been relegated to dwarf planet status and all of that kind of stuff. I have a bone to pick with you over the climate activist comment you made the other day. When is my turn? What's the climate activist comment I made? And bro, I don't trust the climate activists. If you're a climate activist, I'm sorry, I don't trust you, bro.
Like, I could be heard there now?
Yeah, I hear you clear.
Right, yeah, if you want to be the Greta Thunbergs of the world, obviously, but yeah, I mean, I think people in the first world, or should I just say the Western world in general, kind of look at money in this funny way now, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they think money's supposed to like grow on trees, how we say in Trinidad and Tobago, money grow on trees, and in order to have this sustained life, struggle, one have to make a certain cap or else, you know what I'm saying? And listen, I don't think any economy in the world is a perfect one, but the way how humans modern humans kind of discuss, you know, finance and economics is kind of wild, especially Americans now, right? You know, one day they call it about capitalism. The next day they down in the poor people of the world, like, how dare you be poor? And that's crazy to me. Like, that's wild. Like, first you're talking about capitalism is just exploitation, and then you're ready to talk about the fact that if you don't make 50K in New York, you're living in a cardboard box. Like, are you sure you hate capitalism? Do you want people to actually make more than you expect them to make?
I think, bro, that is confused. You're very right. But it's a generation of confused, spoiled children. That's what happened. The Gen Xers into the millennials into the Gen Zers had life and upbringing the easiest any human generation has ever had it ever in the existence of humanity. and they took that and ran with the spoiling, assuming that daddy owes them that all across the world. You listen to many of the modern activists speak, and it's people with daddy issues, people who are vexed with their daddy. That's who they're angry with. When you hear them speak about the atheism side of things, you understand you're hating your daddy. Go speak to your daddy and rectify that relationship, and stop punishing the world for your spoiled relationship with daddy. Lots of them, it's that kind of idea where it's then like they believe everyone is supposed to have the easy soft upbringing that they had, and if anyone doesn't get that, then it's unfair. But what is fair? Like, who gets to choose that? But capitalism is exploitation, bro. I mean, the theory is exploitation. I mean, maybe capitalism, there might be a technical side where you could call it exploitation, but exploitation in what sense? What's the meaning of exploitation you're using there? How is it exploiting? Is it trying to get the most out of something? You exploit a resource. That's what you do. You get the most out of that resource. Or is it that you mean it's advantageous by nature? And if you're talking advantageous, I'll say yes, capitalism does have some advantage, but it's the natural advantage. Capitalism is natural, correct. It's a natural advantage. It's the nature of reality. The taller giraffe reaches more leaves and they eat more food. That's just the reality of nature. Yes, there are advantages. Some people have advantages, some people have disadvantages. That's reality. And I don't think that the system, that we are able yet to create a system that could rectify those disadvantages. All they do is place the advantage in another spot or place the disadvantage in another spot. We aren't yet able to rectify those disadvantages. And what to me capitalism attempts to do is work a system that runs with the natural advantage and disadvantage of the world. The old people saying is, who have more corn feed more fowl. That's kind of a capitalistic statement. If you have more corn, you can feed more fowl. That's just the reality of it. And if you have more corn, maybe you should feed more fowl and provide the system with the benefits of you feeding more fowl. I mean, exploiting the cheapest possible labor force or products to sell on a large scale. Time for Trinidad to exploit Guyana as we do now. Yeah, but no. You see, capitalism, ideally, the free market, is a self-balancing act. Okay, yes, ideally, an employer wants to get the cheapest labor he could get to do something. But that's not the only factor that's at play in the system. The system has many other factors. So these laborers, these workers, don't only have your company to see if they can join. Okay, your company makes ready mix, pre-mix concrete. You're hiring people to work in your pre-mix concrete factory. But you aren't the only pre-mix concrete factory in Trinidad and Tobago. In Trinidad and Tobago, we started off with ready mix. But now there are many others. Central Concrete and Pumps, these guys in purple, every Alaskan, every time you turn in a direction, there's another new premix concrete company opening or selling. So me as the owner of my ready mix company, I'm going to say, all right, I want to hire these workers for the cheapest price possible and get them to rail work and pump out concrete to sell on the market for the most expensive price possible. But the problem is, when I try to pay my workers at $15 an hour, they go by my competition, who would pay them at $20 an hour. But someone opens a fresh new premix company and they're paying them $30 an hour. Where do you think they're going to go? And then which company would have to close down because they don't have the workers? So it's not a single variable input kind of thing where it's only the company trying to get cheap labor. Yes, the company is trying to get cheap labor, but that's not the only variable inside of the mix. So it's not automatically going to mean that everyone is on a race to the bottom with their salaries. That's not how it goes, really and truly. Look at industries where there's no government involvement. There are no government fishermen. Do all fishermen make minimum wage? No, they make how much they are able to get for the fish they sell. User, that's quite creepy.
Oh no, he display picture. It kind of is the same though. He wearing a red shirt and
I know.
beanie.
I know. That's why I say it's kind of creepy. I'm seeing him.
People mean by this is the fact that it tends to get around. Well, America tends to get around to the monopoly thing, and I think we understand. I think economists themselves have told the world that monopolies are bad for economy. I think we understand in monopolies that it's horrible because it quite literally like stagnates the economy to that degree. So yes, if one company exists and that's the only company and they monopolize the market, we understand that they don't have to do anything else but work cheap labor out of people and exploit the market. That's just the truth. That's why people who believe in free market capitalism believe in the competition of it. We believe in everybody's supposed to get in on the exploitation of resources. We believe that 20 cement companies should exist, and the best one shall be the victor. That doesn't mean that he's supposed to monopolize the market. You're supposed to compete against the best man on the block and actually beat him at it.
And it's the problem. It's the problem, a massive problem we get on the economics on the global scale, as I saw RL talking about the US dollar and depression and feeling depressed about all of that. One of the keys to the free market, all right, you're free to sell, you're free to trade, but you're supposed to be free to feel. And one of the problems we have been having is when companies reach over a certain size, all of a sudden governments step in and say, okay, these companies are no longer free to feel. They're too big to feel now. And I think that's a lie. I think that's one of the major problems we face. That and the covering of markets, the protecting of markets. Listen, if everyone could have opened a bank as a free market business, the whole banking industry would have been a whole different kind of thing. The banking industry doesn't try to get you as a customer. They treat you with scant regard. They don't really care much about you because they know the laws are crafted in such a way you have to go to them. But if it was that anyone with enough cash at their disposal could open up a bank, get the proper security, and I could start lending money, I could start saving and protecting money, and I could offer people some kind of interest based on the money I lend out and what is coming in. I could probably give them some interest on the money they save with me. Simple stuff. If that was a free market idea. Now, granted, there might be a lot more conmen on the outside, but the idea that somehow these laws are going to protect us from the conmen sounds ridiculous. When you look every Monday morning, there's a new Get Excel or some kind of nonsense trapping a whole group of people. This isn't stopping the con people anyway, but they say it's for that kind of reason. And unfortunately, now we are trapped in these markets with the insurance companies, with the banks, etc., etc. Don Ma, do you remember me? Remember you from? Why doesn't Central Bank act as a subsidized, low-interest bank for citizens? Because they are not trying to compete with their banking friends. The banks, they want the banks to make money. The intention here is not to allow banking services for cheap and reasonable to everyone. That's not the intention.
Exactly.
Yes, I remember you. On that note, Donma, I remember that. Yeah, Hota.
And that's why you could have a 2008 economic crisis, right? That's why you could have a Great Depression, right? And these sort of things happen. Now, here's the thing. On the flip side of that, the regular man who believes that his labor should be at a cap that he believes should be out of this world, Kryptonian levels of value. That's also ridiculous to me, right? You believe that your value should be so great that you're supposed to protest, that you're supposed to be paid $50 an hour to fry price. Now, when I tell people that's unsustainable, they ask me, so why is unsustainable? Why a business can't put out that kind of money? Well, do you ask a business owner what does he do? Does you ask his operating costs? How much he pays all of his workers? Because he don't employ you, he employ many other people. And when you reach a company level, you have to have a certain level of employees and a certain level of management and administration. People either get paid and those things need operating costs. So when people talk about companies like McDonald's, right? I say, listen, you're watching the total assets of a company and the net income and the profit, sure. But McDonald's can't take too much losses or else it's a done deal, it's a wrap. We close down several different branches and then they might close down all over the world, and that's that'll be it, right? You'll be out of McDonald's and you'll be talking about McDonald's as a thing in a time capsule.
Hotep, bro, I look at these things, and one of the popular ones you see is in a lot of black communities, especially in the United States, since the George Floyd business in 2020. Crime rates spiked. And there were a lot of fools around the place talking about shoplifting is a right for the people, and these $1 million companies should be paying reparations by allowing people to steal from them. If you think I'm talking nonsense, go read some of these fools out there. And they were encouraging this kind of thing, like shoplifting isn't a bad thing. And if people are shoplifting, it's because they are poor, and that's a social reason. That's because these companies are suppressing these neighborhoods. So the shoplifters are kind of just, rebalancing the system and all that kind of nonsense. And the obvious thing happened, because these companies, you watch them and you say, this is a $1 billion company. They could afford to allow people to steal from them. But the reason it's a $1 billion company is because they have a wide spread. They oftentimes don't have a large profit margin. And if your community starts raiding and stealing from these people, they're going to close down. They wouldn't be able to sustain in your community. And now, over the last year or so, you've been seeing another phenomenon, just as strange and unique. In black communities all over the United States, they are protesting that these Walgreens and Walmart and those large big box stores, they're closing down in these black communities. And the communities are complaining. They're making the communities into food deserts, and no one in the community can have access to drugs and pharmaceuticals. Do you have a right to those things? And that's similar to what you were talking about, Trini Hotep. People believe that somehow you have a right for Walmart to have a store in your community. That's your right. And you should be able to rob the store, steal from the store, and Walmart shouldn't do anything about that. It kind of reminds me of a kind of tone that we were talking about in one of the lives where Krimak was talking, and he was saying that, like the Syrians supposed to spend back the money. If you make money, you're supposed to. No. The value you create is providing the service. There's no law or rule that you're supposed to spend the money back in the community, and if you don't give back the community all the money, then it's unfair. No, that's not how this works. You already provided the service. The service you provided is why they gave you the money. And it's kind of ridiculous that our system, especially with the kind of government give me kind of attitude that a lot of people have, they kind of always want to be on the receiving side. I don't want to start a business. I don't want to create. I want someone to go out there, make a lot, and I'm going to watch them and say they should give me some. Instead of, how about I go out there and try to create some on my own? So I find all the ready mix companies don't pay me enough. They're not paying me good enough to work this level of hard work. So you know what I'm going to do? I'll suffer for 5 years, save my money, buy one little premix machine, and I will open my own little Springer's premix concrete and show them how it's done. And when my company start, I'm going to pay my workers $300 an hour just to show Ready Mix and Alescan and them other fellas how to pay people. Show them that. By all means, do that. But what doesn't make sense is you remain at the lowest level, continually begging people to give you more.
Nah, it's funny. It's funny because uh, first world problems is really a thing. American entitlement is a thing. You know what I'm saying? They would plenty of them would routinely say that, oh my God, all the Chinese sweatshops with all the babies in there stitching for 24 hours a day with working for 3 cents, but they will say, we demand and we entitle and deserve your labor for free. So wait, the Chinese man can benefit from the baby labor for 3 cents a day, but you must benefit of the labor of teachers, doctors, lawyers for free. Free, by the way. At least these people, at least the babies get paid 3 cents a day. You want to benefit for free? So wait, you telling me that the government must subsidize you, the people, so teachers must come and give you the labor for free? No, a teacher have the right to demand to be paid. Just like how they're supposed to be right demand to be paid. It's his labor. It's a man's service. It's a man's product. You have no right to his product. And it's funny because it has come full circle, and many black communities have been talking about of this phenomenon of shoplifting. And they say, listen, you all need to stop because you all are basically taking away jobs and taking away rightful resources that people want to come and buy. And but you want to drive 6 miles away, waste gas to go and buy things that could be right there in the community. And it gets back to the point of crime, breeding poverty, like literally.
Correct.
Because why my grandmother must be catching a heart attack when the drugstore used to be right down the road? Now the drugstore is quite over the next side of town because y'all bastards want to do shoplifting. And now you want to talk about why the company can't sustain its building there. That's not how it works.
And you know what's the ridiculous thing, Trini Hotep? When you see the protests, you would think, okay, who would protest there? If pests in the community are robbing the grocery till they have to shut down. It's like in Trinidad at one point in time, they were robbing the Chinese groceries. Like every night there was some kind of robbery in one of these Chinese groceries because there were allegations about reports that the Chinese use more cash and they don't use the bank, so they were prime targets. Now the Chinese got armed security, so some police getting some extra money on extra duty. Good, it's a nice business deal for the police and the criminals there in that sense. But if the bandits in the communities were allowed to shut down these Chinese groceries because they robbed them so much that the Chinese that opened the grocery recognized that, you know what, it's no longer profitable, it's best we find something else to do. Maybe a restaurant is better than this whole grocery idea. Close down the grocery. No grocery opening till 9:30 every single day of the week anymore. And trust me, for those of us who have those groceries in your community where there aren't other large groceries, that 9:30 open. That 9:30 open every single day of the year. Whew. That's a blessing, bro. Sometimes you're just missing that one ingredient, that one thing you need to go out and get in the grocery, and the Chinese grocery has it. If the robbers cause these groceries to close down and communities started to protest, would you protest that the Chinese close their grocery? Horribly, these immigrants, how dare they close their groceries? They should never close the grocery. It's unfair to the community. Or do you protest the dirty bandits who are robbing them and forcing them to close the hotel? These communities rise up in protest, and so often the protest you see is against the corporation. How dare they close their doors? Instead of protesting the reason that they're closing their doors. Your bandit nephews.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense because you see, is this weird notion of wealthy people being so wealthy they could afford to spread around their wealth to the numerous people, and that's not the truth at all. Because sure, in theory, Elon Musk could supply the whole world with probably $1 million or $2 million a man, still have exactly, but
A dollar, man, you mean?
like 8 billion people, bro. You know what I'm saying?
8 billion people, a dollar a man is $8 billion. $2 a man is $16 billion. $3 a man is $24 billion. Elon has what is it now? A couple hundred billion. So maybe he could give everyone $20 maximum. Maximum at $20. And here's the other thing that many people don't understand when they go and read someone's net worth on a website somewhere. The reason the man has that kind of net worth, hundreds of billions of dollars, is because he opened a company. And the company became very profitable. And he owns a large proportion of the company. So if the company is worth $300 billion and he owns 2/3 of the company, they would say he is worth $200 billion. Now, the company that he owns, the portion of the company is worth $200 billion. He does not have a vault somewhere with $200 billion in it. He doesn't even have access to that $200 billion. If he were to attempt to get to access that $200 billion, what he has to do is sell off his stake in the company that is supposedly worth $200 billion. Now, how that will work is he starts selling those shares. And from the moment he begins selling the shares, they begin to be worth less and less. So he's not even going to be able to sell off all his shares and get $200 billion. If he were to attempt to liquidate all, he might barely get $1 billion probably. Probably more than 1 billion if you're being honest, but it's not something that would come out that straightforward. So there are lots of things to understand in that. And then if you want, like sometimes the government talks about Elon Musk being worth $200 billion. So the government wants to tax that money. The government wants to take just a $20 billion from him to, help the government run, to pay for the poor people. And that's the side that many of them talk about, Trini Hotep. What we need is to take from those very wealthy people. What is Elon going to do with $200 billion? Take $20 billion and take it, let the government take it and reappropriate it through the society to help educate people and make sure people don't suffer. And that sounds brilliant. Take some money that the rich man isn't even going to use. But here are some of the problems with that. One, in order for the government to do that, he has to liquidate a piece of his company. To do that, that's making his company, or at least his stake in the company, smaller. He was the one that created the value of that company that allowed it to reach 200 and something billion in the first place. It would make the most sense that the person who was able to create the value in that company is the person who is allowed to utilize the value of that company. Does it make sense that we take from the people who are able to create the most value, take it from them and send it to the government, who we know has a track record of squandering value? That's the system we run. We take from the most efficient producers and give it to the least efficient users and think we're going to get a very sensible, useful system after that. But here's the problem. The voters. It's not the people who create companies worth $200 billion that are the majority of the voters. The majority of the voters are the regular riffraff of the economy. If I, as a politician, could promise you that when I get into power, we're going to take the money from all the rich people and share it among each other, you're going to vote for me. But that's not necessarily a good thing for the country.
Funny is, listen, I was having a conversation with a woman from America, and I was trying to tell she that, I'm saying, America is quite a place where it's a privilege to live, right? I'm saying, and competitive within the market. And she was like, no, this capitalism is exploitative. I rather move to live. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay. I said, listen, it's not a centralized government. My government is a centralized government. I said, do you want to deal with centralized government problems? Because it's fundamentally very different. education system took over and get any type of different governance, you get the same governance.
Yeah.
And bad governance, managed government, that which an American capitalist system. I'm like, yeah, man, you live in a bubble. You live in so much bubble privilege. Yeah, you talking about?
And that's why I was saying that these people are spoiled children who are angry with their daddy. You, it's like the father who overworked. He worked too many long hours, so he provided a really good life for his children, but he wasn't there enough. So they kind of just don't like him. They don't know him. And they're like, my daddy never did anything for me. While using the cell phone that daddy bought, sitting in the house that daddy is paying the mortgage for, driving in the car that daddy paid for, using the gas that daddy paid for. Lots of Americans give that kind of talk. You know, y'all have no idea. This place is horrible, the capitalism, blah, 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 blah. But they will dare not leave. They will not leave. That is talk about she rathers to live here. That's not going to happen. They talk about that, but they don't live that. Because if they were to live it, they would recognize it's a different reality. It's like those online people who speak gangstery about the US. I was watching something the other day with the Houthis and they're firing, and there are lots of internet rebels against the US out here lately, and they're like, yeah, people ain't afraid the US like that anymore. The US ain't had nothing out, and I'm like, you all have no idea what you speak about. If the United States wanted and they weren't afraid of the media backlash, they could make Yemen disappear in a moment's notice. Like, you don't have to think that the United States and the people who run it are God incarnate, but like, be reasonable with who the big fish are inside the pond that you live in. It doesn't make sense that we are ignorant about the realities of the pond we live in. We know the reality of the pond. That is the big fish. By any stretch of any imagination, they still remain being the big fish. Now, they may implode. That's a possibility. But that doesn't change the reality as it stands right now. And the Americans living large off of the rewards of decades of capitalism while spitting on capitalism, that the irony of that never ceases to amaze me. The iPhone users lambasting capitalism, posting their socialist and communist memes and pictures all over social media. It's ridiculous, really and truly. It's like back in the era of the transatlantic slave trade, and someone has a field full of slaves and they're using their slaves to design anti-slavery slogans and placards out there. They're going to protest with signs made by their own slaves back home. It's kind of ridiculous.
No, it's the truth, it's the truth, man. I simply shut down the conversation by saying, I said, listen, do you know how much people immigrate to America every year? And do you know how much people immigrate out of America every year? It's not even close. So let's stop it right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, stop it right now. Right now, America have a dread immigration crisis, and that's not even a joke. Mm-hmm. It's so bad that the real politicians are telling people to house immigrants in their private houses, in their beds.
Yep. Public schools are having off days because the migrants are being housed inside of the schools. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Even the socialist guy Bernie Sanders said that a couple years ago before the left went totally off the cliff. He was saying there are too many poor people in the world. If you open up American immigration to everyone in the world, it's going to be flooded, obviously. Like, I there's this Trini girl I see on Twitter, very delusional lass, and she's open borders. but she's open borders for the United States. But I always want to question her if she's open borders to Trinidad and Tobago too. Would she have an open borders view to Venezuela when Venezuelans entering Trinidad and Tobago? Because I could tell you, if there are open borders between Venezuela and Trinidad, Trinidad will not exist in a very short time, at least not in its current incarnation. It's the reality. In order to have a nation, you need a border. The border is by definition kind of what defines the nation. And a border is by definition exclusionary or exclusionary. It's supposed to exclude people. That's what the border does. In order for my family home to be my family home, there must be a boundary where people who don't belong inside of my family home are excluded from. And I don't owe anybody outside of the border, the boundary, the same thing that I owe the people inside of the border or the boundary. And if everyone comes inside of the border or the boundary, it becomes impossible to service them. And it's kind of funny. The same people who say that the state is supposed to supply your every need are kind of the same people that say that everyone is supposed to be able to enter the state. Those two things are obviously mutually exclusive. You cannot welcome everyone while at the same time taking care of everyone's needs. You are not God out here. That's not going to happen. So you would assume, if you're saying open borders, like there are open borders believers who are libertarians. There are a group of open border believers who are libertarians. They believe that border there shouldn't exist these hard borders, but they also believe that every man should fend for themselves. So, okay, you're free to go to anywhere, but when you go there, you aren't going to get government benefits. The government isn't going to give you anything. You have to go and make it on your own. And then in that case, you could argue a bit about that. Very likely the people that enter your place then are going to come looking to add something to your economy. But that's not the kind of countries that exist right now. Most countries have some kind of social security net. Our country is not going to leave a Venezuelan pregnant woman to make a child on a street corner. That will make news and somebody is going to be lambasted in the health department. That's not going to happen. So they are going to be able to access our resources. And I mean, you're not going to want a society where, okay, Trinidadians access the healthcare and then we have an underclass of Venezuelans flooding the streets all about that aren't be able to access our public healthcare. That's just not going to look right. So maybe the best thing might be not to allow so many people to enter in that they kind of choke out such resources. I'm more libertarian leaning. I don't think the government should be providing a lot of those things. But if you're trying to argue for me to have the state provide education, have the state provide health, that has to be in a closed setting. That can't be for everybody.
Well, that's what they try to do, right? Well, it being more Democrat than anything else, more liberal people than anything else, they believe that it should be provided to every man jack in America, right down to need. They probably believe that criminals should access some stuff up in there too.
Yes.
Which is ridiculous because.
But Hotep, you a man that limes around some of that political stuff in the US. Don't you know there are people who want to abolish the police and abolish prisons?
Yeah. I've been around the abolitionists.
Like, with no police. These people are delusional. They grew up in a bubble. Bro, anybody who grew up knowing that there are evil people out there, the idea of there being no prisons and no police should scare the living daylights out of you.
Yeah, no, I've been around the total abolitionists. They are delusional. They are they're really crazy. Like, they're insane to me because they believe in this notion of therapy of a criminal, and that doesn't make a lick of sense because when the person do a crime, how are you even getting them in a room because why would you want to abolish prison, but then all of a sudden when a man rape a woman exclusively, you want to throw him underneath the prison? So that doesn't make any sense either. You know what I'm saying? You believe that one thing trumps the other. That doesn't make any sense. So abolitionism doesn't make any sense to me. That's for one. That doesn't make a lick of sense. What they try to do.
I don't know if you remember, Hotep. I did a video a while back speaking about different worldviews, and some people have the worldview that we humans are in a fallen state and we are attempting to, with a lot of errors, use society to cure the ills and difficulties that reality presents in our way. While there are some people who are Rousseauian, who believe that man is born free, but everywhere they look, he is in chains. It's the kind of what they call blank slate kind of thinking, where all the negatives of humans are because of some societal ill. So if someone is a criminal, it's because the society didn't provide them with the right amount of resource. And you have to understand, if you're a socialist, this is how you are supposed to believe. This is what you are supposed to believe, because the socialist ideal is that if the state could provide all of the necessary resources for someone, then you will have a perfect utopian state. That is what socialists believe. So the solution to crime isn't crime fighting by police. The solution to crime is to make sure that the criminals get all of the care and therapy and resources that they need. A criminal is only a criminal because they are Aladdin and they are poor and need to feed their family, and that's why they are stealing. That's why they believe that poverty causes crime, because the only reason a criminal is because they are poor and need something. That's why they are stealing. And the job of the state would be to sustain that need that the person has. So if the state sustains the need that the person has, then obviously the person wouldn't steal anymore. But that doesn't answer the question that the same socialists and communists talk about, where they say that all of the rich capitalists are stealing greedy thieves. I thought it's only the poor, needy people who need to steal. So how do these rich, wealthy capitalists also steal? And lack of resources that gives people the impetus to steal. It's ridiculous. And what that does is, in reality, what you attempt to do is, all right, the state is going to see about everyone's needs. And so if someone is in jail, it's not to look at them as a criminal. It's to look at them as a victim of society. You understand? And that's the default Marxist belief. That's how a Marxist would have to look at this. The person is in prison because society failed them. Society didn't supply some need that was supposed to be supplied. And that's why they believe the solution is to abolish prisons and make more mental health officers to go and give them therapy and soothe their childhood trauma. And if these social workers reach these men would no longer be criminals, because, as of course, they're only criminals because of some lacking resource.
No, I see that. That's the problem, right? That's when your ideology is only restricted to looking at one thing. It's a bias at the end of the day, right? Because the thing is, Pablo Escobar was poor. He grew up with like 12 siblings, and his father was a poor farmer. But at the end of the day, Pablo Escobar was on the back of Forbes magazine as the richest man in the world at one point in time. That didn't stop him from basically turning his country into the crime capital of the world. He didn't say, well, I became a billionaire, so I'm going to stop selling drugs to the rest of the world, and I'm going to seclude myself with my family, with my millions. No. You know what he did? He created some more drugs, and then he created some more killings. And you know what's funny is that whole talk of socialist talk dead flat into the ground, because the same big daddy government they want is the same government that does them all types of nonsense, and that is the same politicians that are actually rich.
Yeah.
All the politicians rich.
Democide is the leading cause of purposeful human death. The other thing that takes out more humans are disease. Other than that, the government killing is what kills the most people. So careful how you trust your government. It's a very unwise move to try and trust your government like that. Gersh asks, so what is your solution? My solution is the solution that human beings figured out since we started civilization. There are some people who do not want to live by the rules of your civilization. You extricate them from your civilization. You remove them from your civilization. There was once upon a time where exile was the way you did that. All right, you don't want to live by our rules? Go live by your own rules. You do what you want outside of our civilization. As I've said before, unfortunately, we can no longer exile people. There's no neutral land. We can't exile the bad guys because they will end up somewhere. We send them in a boat off from Trinidad and it's like we're sending them to Venezuela. So unfortunately, we must exile them in the country. I'm a believer in prisons. Lock them up. Lose them in the prison. Separate them from society. That's the main thing. First and foremost. Maybe after we already separate them from society, basically exile them, then we could go back and say, yo, you alive down there? Yeah, boy. You think we could rehabilitate you? Let me see now. And that's how we deal with that. The idea that we as a society should be bending over backward to try always to fix the people who do not want to exist within our societal rules or enforcement. Like, all right. We already have a Ministry of Social Development.
And Family Affairs.
Okay, we already have that. Maybe we should have Fuera that at a training hotel, but all right, it already exists.
We should.
Let's allow them to attempt to do that social side. I don't want to hear anything about that from my Ministry of National Security, from my Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I don't want to hear anything about that. What I want to hear is how you are going to separate the law-abiding citizens from the law-breaking citizens. That's your most important duty. Full stop. And if you haven't yet conquered that duty, don't move on looking to do some other kind of unique, special something. You haven't shown yourself able to do what you should be doing in the first place. That's my solution, Gush. And the thing is, for me, when I look statistically, all around the world, law enforcement works for reducing crime. You look in those same black communities that talk about abolish police and abolish prisons. You increase police presence, you decrease crime. El Salvador was struggling with murders by the grop. I think I spoke about murders by the grop already. And what El Salvador did? Built a 40,000 man prison and put all the murderers in the prison. And shockingly, who would have guessed? Murders stopped. If you take the murderers, put them in a building, and separate them from the society, they can no longer murder people. Amazing, amazing revelation, people. Who would have thought? And that's just the thing. It's kind of obvious. Good evening, Dinkan. It's kind of obvious. In Trinidad and Tobago, if the men that were in prison were blocked off from the rest of society, lots of crime would have decreased already. I'm not even talking about the police arresting more people, just the people already in prison. If we were able to put a glass dome around the prison and lock them in there and forbid them from communicating outside, the crime rate would decrease already. And I'm sure most of us who have knowledge of certain criminal activities and how they run, you would know that to be true. Of course. So that is the solution. People act like sometimes the solution is some kind of fantastical something. It's because they don't actually want to deal with the real solution. And the point I regularly make about that, where people talk about the social issues and stuff, the point I regularly make: white European countries ruled black and brown countries that hated them, were socially disparate, were socially broken up, and those countries had low crime rates. Why? They enforced law with an iron fist. This isn't a suggestion of how to do law enforcement per se, but it's just a point to show that certain things are possible. Some people were able to enslave millions of other people and still maintain a nearly 0% robbery and murder rate. These people were slaves. If you're talking about social structure, they were literal slaves. And somehow, the people over them were able to maintain those slaves in a society with low crime. Is it that the slaves had such good social structures? You know, those slave daddies and slave mommies really grow their slave babies up with good social structure. Was that it? Or was it that the law enforcement was so onerous, it was so overwhelming, it was basically impossible to do any of the other things that some of them may have been motivated to do? And you're trying to tell me now, in a civilization here, with a lot more law enforcement, a lot better social structure, people with better motivations, I would hope, than people who were enslaved, and it's impossible now to enforce laws.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing, Nathan. I think, I just think that we stress too much things upon the government, basically the other people. So to me, it's like this. It's like Trinidadians, Americans, they argue about what I supposed to do with $20 an hour, not good enough for me. What I supposed to do, how I supposed to feed my family. Okay, maybe you, the people of the country, shouldn't allow your government to disrupt your economy and put the hands, all the nasty, greasy hands, the KFC finger, all over your economy and mash it up. Maybe you, the people, have the power to vote in proper governance or better governance, as it. Maybe not have the people that's supposed to represent you do you dirty. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe make your entry level job actually entry level, so it could be usable by the young populace, that they don't have to beg for $30 an hour to flip burgers. Maybe make the streamline of the job market with ease and better regulation. No, just beg daddy government to give me more money, because that's what we need, more money.
Yep. And it doesn't even work in the long run. The point, that point about the entry level jobs, I watch that and lament about that continually. People constantly complain entry level jobs are disappearing, and then they ask for the things that cause those entry level jobs to disappear. They say that people can't survive on minimum wage. Well, a person isn't supposed to survive on an entry level job. Like, if you want survival on an entry level job, how much do you expect the one further than that to make? Like, entry level is supposed to be entry level. You're not supposed to be doing this while you have a wife and 3 children to support and a mortgage and a car note and all of that. That's not when you're supposed to be making that flipping burgers job. The flipping burgers job wasn't for the mother. The flipping burgers job was for her daughter. That's part of the problem. And I think by some of the incentives we've done, we've removed the possibility of the right people doing those jobs. A car wash isn't supposed to be where someone with a child goes for employment. That's not ideally where you're supposed to go. You were supposed to go there when you were 16, and let's say car wash. By the time you reach 20, you have 4 years of car washing experience. You at least could open your own car wash. So now you don't have to depend on somebody else giving you a salary. Your skill will pay for you. By the time you're 20, if you entered at 16, that's the idea. It shouldn't be a 30-year-old person now picking up a washcloth for the first time and they already have a family home. So the first day they reach on the job, they already need a $300 to fill a hole in rent and bills when they get back home. But bro, you now pick up a washcloth. By the time, if we put you to wash the whole car, you might scratch up the car and you would only get through it 3 cars washing for the day. You make your profit to the business is negative. The business is losing money hiring you for the first week of your work. And you expect us to pay you more. It's not going to happen. Ideally, we should be able to give you some food and tell you we would feed you while we teach you the skill, and that's enough. Because you're supposed to be living home with mommy and daddy with no bills to pay, and a good piece of a good food and sit down and lime and learn the work is enough payment for you. But no. We're saying that this job is supposed to sustain a family.
No, no, but that's the thing. It's to me because I was listening to a conversation probably like 3 days ago, and the woman who spoke made sense, and I've come to the realization this whole talk about a livable wage and something like that, I think that's lazy procrastinating talk. Like this talk everything. That's why I don't believe in equality and equity, because this thing about making all jobs equal, you telling me you want to be livable wage flipping burgers, bro? You want to end your life at 65 flipping burgers, bro? And you want to make $1 million flipping. You think that's sustainable to the economy?
As you say that, Trini Hotep, something just stuck out to me. By not allowing certain jobs to have a livable wage, you put a pressure on people to get better. You see, if you cannot make a livable wage flipping burgers, then you understand that you can't remain flipping burgers your whole life. If at 16 I'm flipping burgers, and I already understand I can't mind a family flipping burgers, then I understand from the time I was 16, I have to improve my skill level. I have to learn some managerial skills, so at least I'll step out of the burger flipping line and understand how to manage some workers and maybe get a senior store manager position by the time I'm in my early 20s. I have an impetus to move. But if you're telling me every job has to be a livable wage, from the time I crawl out of the eggshell, I am the larva, I'm in larva stage. I haven't even transformed into the pupa, much less adult stage. I'm still the larva. And you're telling me I'm supposed to make a livable wage. Then what impetus would I have to move on from that larval stage? And then, as you said rightfully, Trini Hotep, you'd be stagnating the entire economy. Okay, you start cutting grass. You join my company. I have bought all of these still whackers. They work well. By the way, we do some landscaping. If you're interested in that, hit us up over. Well, I don't have a page for that. Anyway, I made the investment of the machines. You come and work for me. I tell you now, you know what? Every yard you cut, I'll pay you $100. That $100 not really cutting it for you. You find that $100 not allowing you to lime the way you want to lime. So you know what that's going to do? Well, I'm going to try to cut as many yards as possible every day, because it's $100 I'm getting per yard. Reeve is everything I'm doing. Can't you tell that by now? I do it all. There's no one thing, sir. But yeah, $100 a yard. So you're coming to me from 5 in the morning and telling me, pull up my day. I want to cut as many yards as I could. I getting through 6 yards in a day. So I'm working from 5 in the morning till the last light in the evening, 7 in the night, and I'm now blowing out the last yard. So those 6 yards make me a $600. And I'm saving that hard per day. What am I aiming at? I want to buy a whacker, because I know The contract for cutting the yard is $400 a yard, and you're paying me $100. So I'm not going to go and protest and say, no, Nathan Springer and Springer Industries evil. They should pay me a livable wage for cutting my grass. No. All right. I know there's money in cutting grass. I learned the skill of cutting grass. I save my money. I buy a total whacker. I'm not even going for the top level. I'm not going for the still yet. Because still is 5,000 something if I want a nice big one. I buy a total whacker for $1,200. And while I still work for Springer Industry, I take some side jobs home for my neighbors. And I don't even charge $300 yet. I'm charging $250 because my whacker now is powerful. That's how you do that. And the impetus for doing that is because I didn't make enough money working for the other man. If the other man gave me a livable wage, then I'd still be cutting grass for him. And the economy doesn't progress the same rate. Some jobs are not supposed to be able to live on. You're not supposed to live doing that job. It's not supposed to work like that. Go ahead.
But you see, Nathan, that's the thing. I think with millennials and Gen Z, they just aren't motivated enough. And they have nothing to motivate them. Because as we know, Gen Z create less families, they less relationships, less social life. They have no motivation guaranteed to do up any sort of ladder. And then obviously with political ideologies, the system is rigged, capitalism is exploitative, it's not beneficial anyway. So of course they would believe that being a mailman, the mailman in the mail room, or the man behind the counter as a cashier at McDonald's is the greatest thing ever, and the government should increase that to the 10th of the maximum. But they want the cost of living to remain the same.
Insanity.
Which is insanity, because that's the first thing I understand with people. They don't understand what the economy is. They don't understand what money is.
Reeve saying they are also more educated, and that's true, Reeve, but I think that's part of the lie that was sold to this generation, that somehow education should mean that your value to society goes up. No! Education doesn't mean that. Listen, sir, you could spend 60 years getting educated on the fine details of gravel stones, and it is of no value to society, and no one is going to pay you any more money for it. Now, we got tricked. Well, not we got tricked, but there was a kind of lie sold, and I'm blaming the Marxists also for some of that. But a kind of lie sold that, everyone is supposed to reach to the furthest lengths of education, and that's automatically a net positive thing. I don't believe that. As someone pointed out, a lot of the educated university graduates in Trinidad are extremely liberal. Because education for a while now, a lot of it isn't really teaching you more information. It's indoctrinating you into a certain political ideology. So it's not an automatic good thing to me. Some of these people who spent the extra 3, 4, 5 years in school were supposed to spend that year working, gaining experience. And then after they finished the 5 years of experience, they would have had a good job when they were 22. Instead, they went to the university, got a degree, and come out with a sense of entitlement and a brain full of garbage, thinking that they are owed a job paying them $12,000 a month. That's partially what is happening too. We have ballooned the expectations of many young people. They expect way more than is given at that stage, or than can be acquired at that stage. You're not supposed to really be able to buy a $1.5 million house at 21. That tells you something about the housing market itself, but a whole other discussion. In my work, I have 3 22-year-olds with master degrees that can't use Excel. And you see, the thing is, when you have free education, and it's not a knock on free education necessarily, or the people who accessed it, because I got it too. I benefited greatly from it. But when you have free education, you don't have the people who are motivated to do these things in these fields. It's just another I don't use the word spoiled necessarily, but another child growing up institutionalized, accustomed to some authority figure telling them what to do, and some authority figure told them to go and spend 3 extra years in school, and then some authority figure told them to spend 2 extra years in school, and now they're out with no real added maturity on their learning. Of course, I must expect a livable wage if I have a degree I pay for. But that's the thing, Reeve. Many of them didn't pay for the degree. And if the degree was as such that you had to go work and pay for it, it's not a government insured loan like the US has, or a government insured grant like Trinidad has. It's like the olden days. No one is helping you here. If you want to go and learn feminist dance theory, you go get a job, work every day very hard at your job. The money you get from your job, some of it goes to you living, and some of it goes to your education. All of a sudden, what that education is able to provide for you after you finish becomes a lot more important. And I think a lot of young people spend too long without a good job. You're not supposed to be 24 and never worked a day in your life. I don't think that's supposed to be. That's my opinion. Reeve says, and if now you're telling me don't bother with education, well, okay, but don't expect wage if you're not educated either. So I can't win then. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that wage is not or should not be linked to education. Wage is linked to the value you provide to the system or to the economy. So what you should be doing if you are interested in wage, if you are interested in getting a lot of money, what you should be looking at is where in the system there is a need that isn't being provided for. That's how you do that. You can't just automatically go spend 4 years doing anything and expect that at the end somebody is supposed to owe you a big salary. That's not how that works. It really isn't. And what I'm saying about not going for that further education is not that you're not supposed to get higher paid. Because if you have 5 years of experience instead of the 5 years of education, there's a high chance that you will be paid additionally for the 5 years of experience. Like the example I regularly make, the example I just did, the landscaper. Let's say you ended school at 16, started cutting grass with a landscaper. How much money could you save, and maybe how much of your own landscaping company can you launch in 4 years from 16 to 20? Or let's say 5 years, 16 to 21. How far do you think you could reach? And how much money a month might you be making if you seriously focused on advancing your landscaping as a career? You went into this with advancement as your purpose. After 5 years, how far do you think you could reach? I think after 5 years, it's very easy in landscaping for someone to open their own landscaping company. Maybe by then they're raking in tens of thousands a month, because cutting grass isn't exactly a cheap thing these days. And that person who, instead of going through 2 years of Form 6 and 3 years of a bachelor's degree, they went through 5 years of experience in a trade, basically. Their salary by the end of that 5 years may be higher than the salary of someone who decided to go through educating themselves further for those 5 years. And I don't think that's a bad thing either. I cannot pay for a landscaping degree off of $300 a yard. 1, yes you can, and 2, who says you need a degree? You see, that's the lie that has been told. Who says anything about needing a degree? What's the degree for? If you know how to do the job, you learn the job. What's the degree for? Trust me, the system we are moving towards is, I know, and that's why I'm saying it even in this example. The system we are moving towards is much more it's much less credential, you know. It's having the ability to do the thing is the most important thing. You're going to cut a grass. The person isn't going to ask you for your grass cutting certificate. If you cut the grass good, that is all the certificate you need. You make a page on Instagram and show a video of all the beautiful yards you cut. And that's better than any degree could get you. The idea that the degree is what is needed isn't true. It isn't true, not necessarily true. It isn't true. Many modern companies are moving away from the credentialed also.
They are, and that's why when I see Trinidadian people start talking about, but how they want me to have a master's or a bachelor's and 10 years experience in the same field or a similar field, I'm like, well, that's what you get for your government bubbling your head up with education and you grandstanding on it. So now you have the valued entry level position because you come out with your master's degree. And I would never debase myself to pay $3,000 a month to work at entry level position. I work hard for this bachelor's. Oh, no, you work hard for nonsense because a company want abilities too. Company don't want you to come here with regurgitated information and you don't know how to even do Excel sheets.
Here's the thing. And to deal with a few of these. First thing, Beauty Cupid says for certain fields you must have a degree, and that's 100% true. There are certain fields you just have to have a degree because of the system we have. Now, the reality outside of the system is that you never need a degree. A doctor doesn't need a degree to be a good doctor. You do understand that, right? Someone could be very good at healing human beings without a degree. The degree is a system issue. The degree is a system issue. The system created such a thing that requires the degree. And I think even in that case, a lot of that, this is my opinion, a lot of that is modern day aristocracy. So many of the wealthy people that have control of the system make the access to some of the higher level jobs so exclusionary that only their children who have the connections and the resources are able to enter and access it in the first place. Because some of those jobs didn't require a university qualification. Why wasn't it just an exam that you did to pass to show that you know the content? Why must it be that I must sign up with this university and pay 4 years of fees in order to do those exams? And then why can't it be that you test me? I do the exam, you test me, and you see what I'm able to do. Beauty Cupid says, cannot do engineering without a degree. You cannot do official engineering without a degree. But who was the qualified engineer who built the Colosseum? Can you remember which degree the engineers who built the great aqueducts in Rome? What university they went to again? The engineers that did all the cathedrals throughout Europe that have been standing 1,000 years. Which universities were they graduates of? So it's not that the university, not that the degree is necessary. It's the system that created that thing. And that's, as it were, an answer to what Reeve also says, where he says the celebrity ads I cutting for asking for my credentials in order to trust my business. That's not actually going to happen. To make myself competitive, I get a degree to understand the intricacies of grass cutting. You don't need a degree to understand the intricacies. You need to understand the intricacies to understand the intricacies. That's all it takes. And that's why a lot of the very intelligent people drop out of college. Because they reach a point where they recognize, oh, I have found out what I came here to learn. I don't need to finish the rest of this. It's not necessary. Well, that's I was saying that, Reeve. The system. Listen, I'm not telling anybody to go practice law, medicine, or engineering without a degree or without qualifications. The system has already decided that. I'm talking about the actual reality of it, being able to do the thing. And now you're talking about the celebrity ads. Have you seen how many super expensive barbers there are in Trinidad now? Barbers telling you $400, five, six, seven for the home visit, and they're cutting celebrity hairs and putting it up on Instagram and all of that. How many of those barbers have barbering degrees?
Not one.
None.
Not one is just.
And you know, there are celebrity barbers that go traveling the world with rappers and celebrities. You know why? Because they could give me a fresh lineup. That is all. I don't care if you went to university. If the man went to university messing up my mark, fire for that. It's just being able to do the job. And I'm pretty sure cutting grass would be something very similar to that. If we're being real. Timbuktu had first university 1,000 years ago. What's your point? What's your point? What's your point, Beauty Cupid? There being a university 1,000 years ago does not negate the point I'm making that a university degree isn't necessary to do engineering medicine, or law. It is not. It is technically required by the system, but in terms of the ability to do the capability to do it, it's not required to have a degree. I can tell you it have plenty of them with certificates. A lot of them with certificates do that after the fact. They get famous, they get some money, they fly out to the States, go to some barbering course for a week, and get a certificate to stick up on the wall because they think it looks good. But the certificate isn't what made them big. Clearly, you're not an engineer. What are you talking about? You have no idea. Beauty Cupid, trust me, you have no idea on that front.
Okay, we first said yes. The whole term of school and a school is not new. It's very old. It's ancient, as old as time. But the concept of having a degree, paper on the wall, credentials, that's new. That's modern. People didn't need that in order to have the ability to do something. Like when the great pharaohs of Egypt was building pyramids and stuff, the men who were building didn't have degrees. They went to school to learn how to do masonry and all this other thing, but they didn't have degrees.
Beauty Cupid, a real engineer would not agree, of course. You know all what real engineers say. Stop talking rubbish. You sound like you probably have never met an engineer in your life. By the way, in Trinidad and Tobago, technically engineering is what is done to build residential homes. 95% probably of the homes built in Trinidad are built, designed, constructed from scratch without a single engineer involved. Sometimes it's a man who never passed primary school. And he is doing all the civil engineering on all the buildings that you sit and sleep in Trinidad and Tobago. You do understand that, right? There was no engineer design for the building. There's no plan for this building that was crafted by an engineer. And I could tell you, being a contractor in Trinidad and Tobago, even the buildings with the engineering plans are nearly always edited away from engineering specifications by a man who isn't an engineer. And what would you know? The buildings stand. Like, what are you talking about? I struggle to believe you're an engineer because you speak as someone delusional, someone who doesn't actually understand the industry they purport to work in. Reeve says, and then the roof fly off, the earthquake collapse it, the flood mash it up. Sometimes, yes, but that also happens with engineered buildings too, just so you know. There are many engineered specifications that are literally impossible to build to because some of these engineers are fools. Go into the industry. Go into the industry, you will see that. So, for Beauty Cupid to speak the way they're speaking, it doesn't sound like a person who is actually an engineer. Because if you were an engineer, you would know in Trinidad and Tobago that for sure buildings don't require engineers out here. And do the roads that we pave, that where the surfacing comes up within a week and a half, are those roads engineered? Do we have road engineers that study how thick and how much to press down this material? You know, what size of roller should we use on this? Do we have that for those roads? Or do we have a small contractor who has a link inside of the local government, get a little N, and he have 5 men with a rake, and sometimes he have the small little roller that probably supposed to roll a cricket pitch, and that's what he's rolling the road on. What are you Beauty Cupid? What are you talking about? I know the answer to the questions because I do those things, Beauty Cupid. I do those things. And I could tell you, in Trinidad and Tobago, engineers don't. Or at least they aren't needed. And both of my siblings are qualified in engineering. Both mechanical. Both. And neither of them work in the engineering field. It's not something like, you know, it's either one, you aren't an engineer, or you're one who has hinged a whole lot of their prestige in life on engineering. So you feel like it's something that is so necessary in life, but it really isn't. It really out here not. It sounds foolish, really. Go and re-listen this on YouTube and see if what you're saying makes sense. Does City have real engineers? When something goes wrong, news says we send for a foreign engineer. You're asking some important questions there, Judy Judd. You're asking, Juddy Judd, you're asking some very important questions there. The engineers that boast in Trinidad. A lot of the engineers in Trinidad are copy-paste masters, you know. You go to an engineer and you ask them to design something, strength test something, show what is the size needed for something, and they copy paste something from a building in 1980 and send it to you like with their new stamp and telling you, well, this was $3,500, you have to pay for this. About engineering like it's some necessary thing. Give me a break. Yeah. Anybody who actually works in these industries would know the answer to these things.
And this is why some people scoff at people who tout their degrees in people's face, because people really think that because you were able to go to an institution, sit down, learn repetitively, regurgitate, that you could come out here and now start to say, well, you know, I have a degree and you don't know anything. No. Before people had it, today, a house would fall down quicker than the cathedrals they built back in the day, and tell you how different. Like, what?
They are building practices. Hotep. I don't know if the master engineer, Beauty Cupid, knows this. They are building practices that were used previously, that we have lost the technology of utilizing. With all of our Beauty Cupid is a hurt bird right now. The engineer, the prestige around their engineering degree is collapsing around them, and their world is hurting. So we could ignore what they're saying henceforth. The arguments have fallen and crumbled, like many of the engineering works. You know, in Trinidad and Tobago, if you're asking someone to build a building for you, you may not ask an engineering firm. Nathan, I would never say you don't know what you're talking about, but I'm unclear as to whether you're advising against academic certification. I most certainly am not Reeve. I teach. I do many other things, but the main thing I do is teaching. So why would I advise against the main thing I do? What I'm saying is that, especially with the Trinidadian ideal for education, we have the wrong mindset going into education. So we choose the wrong subjects, and then we have broken hearts at the end after we do it. A lot of the times we're going into the further education with the wrong mindset. We're going into it for the prestige that Beauty Cupid wants. To feel like, I did something that nobody else could do. I'm an engineer. No. What's the point of me teaching? The point of me teaching is to impart knowledge. You see, here's the thing, Beauty Cupid. What makes the building that someone builds not fall down is if they have the knowledge of what to do to make it not fall down. Not if they have the paper that says they're supposed to know what to do to not make it fall down. You understand the difference I'm talking about? And that's the teaching I attempt to impart. The teaching where the importance is put on learning. And you know something that I've found? When you give that to children, the focus of learning here is on learning, is on the importance of understanding this thing, not on getting a qualification, not on passing an exam. So it's not like we have to do 1 million past papers so we memorize all the questions that are coming in this exam and we know nothing about the subject. No, that's not what we are here for. We are here to actually learn the subject. And what would you know? Many of the times problematic students that some people say have learning disabilities, come to us and all of a sudden it's like the flower of their learning opens up. Because learning starts to make sense. I'm not just learning this for mommy to say I get an A and boast to her friends. I'm not learning this to put my name as Beauty Cupid and go and show off on a live somewhere that maybe I'm an engineer anonymously on the internet. I'm doing this so I actually learn something. I know what I'm doing when I'm doing it. That's what teaching is about. And that's what my focus is, Reeve. It's not that I'm saying don't go for academic qualification. By all means, go till you could get the PhD even. But you do it for the right reasons. And then when you do it for the right reasons, you'll recognize that the frustrations about how much money I'm going to make after I graduate, those things kind of solve themselves much more. And in Trinidad, I find particularly the Caribbean with CXC in and of itself has helped to reinforce that mentality. It has helped to reinforce the certification above knowledge mentality. There are many people who have written CXC and they don't learn the subject matter. They memorize past paper questions. They don't know. They have memorized it. So to tie it back, why I can't go and get my bachelor's in yard cutting. Right. Here's what I'm saying, Reeve. A bachelor's in yard cutting generally would mean, if you're talking degree kind of thing, 3 years you're going to spend exclusively paying top dollar to a university to learn information that right now is on the internet. So you would ask yourself, in my present place in life, is this something that is necessary? Is this something that is going to benefit me? What you won't do is go do the degree and come back 3 years later thinking, oh no, this didn't make sense. Christopher Hines, there's other professionals who do buildings. Yes. But yes, to reiterate, I'm not telling people to go and fail your CXC. I'm not telling people to go drop out of school. That's not what I'm doing by any means. But reach to the furthest extent that you could educate yourself. By any means. But understand what the purpose is you're doing this for. It's not going to school for yard cutting. It's like school to make juice. We were using the yard cutting as an example here. We're not actually recommending the yard cutting going to school. It was an example. But on the flip side of disregarding the benefit of education, Griffstad, sometimes just how it could seem like, I might find Beauty Cupid was seeming like they're overemphasizing the benefits of, wow, I'm on 1% people. I'm going to knock out just now. Just how some people overemphasize the education side, some people de-emphasize the education side. And maybe going to school for some of those things, finding out the further details would add an edge onto you that many other people wouldn't have. And that happens sometimes. Some people, they minimize the benefit of educating themselves. Reeve, that's true. That's true. So like going to school for making juice. The example you use there, Griffstad. Maybe if you did go to school for making juice, you may learn some advanced techniques that make your juice making at a different level. Now you may be the top juice maker because you added a little extra to it. Anyway, people, my battery gonna die now. I'm on 1%. I'm gonna knock out before I knock out. Laters, this was nice. I hope you're educated, informed, and entertained. I'll see you guys again tomorrow night for the next Mindful Live on Friday night, starting somewhere around that 9 to 9:30 p.m. time. I hope you're educated, informed, and entertained. This has been the Thursday Talks Mindful Live. Big up on yourself. Stay well. Laters, people. Hold it down. Bye. Laters, boy, Hotep.